Let's dive into All Killer No Filler. This comes out in 2001. This is the big major global breakthrough. Three singles, Fat Lip, In Too Deep, Motivation. It was on the Billboard 200 for almost a year. The album goes platinum in the US, three times platinum in Canada, sells over 3 million copies. It was the third best-selling album of the year in Canada by a Canadian artist. Could you ever have imagined when you started the band that just 5 years later you would have this much success with this album?
I think at the time when you're a young man or an old boy, it's probably more what I was, like you're not necessarily thinking at the time, this is crazy. I mean, it's fun and it's exciting and you know things are happening. You can feel the momentum, but you don't have the world and life experience to compare it to an alternate reality. And I basically graduated high school, and then 6 months later, we were signed to a major label. So, like, I just kind of started doing that, and it just seemed as if it was something that was happening. And this is crazy, but this is happening. It wasn't until much later when I was older, looking back and being like, that's bananas. Like, we saw No Effects at 1996 Warped Tour. We're like, let's start a No Effects, like, kind of band. And then by 2000, we're signed to a major label and we start playing Warped Tour. I think we did 2 weeks or something. And then by 2001, we do the whole tour and we're hanging out with No Effects. Like that time window is 4 years or something. Like it was really compressed, but it seemed normal at the time. It wasn't until I got older and I started looking back and going like, that's actually kind of crazy that that happened. The amount of things that need to go right that are beyond your control. You could have the songs, you could have the personality, you could have the chops on your instrument, all that. You could have a great recording and a good record. But especially at the time, when I kept saying this a couple of times now, there was no outlet like the internet where you could just upload it to YouTube and people find it. And several artists that we have now have started that way. I think Billie Eilish, massive. She was like posted stuff on YouTube, was discovered that way. So, but at the time, you needed label people and you needed radio people and you needed all these other things to click in like a domino. And I mean, Murphy's Law dictates that it's not going to work. Something will go wrong. But for us, it didn't. It's crazy. Like, I don't know how it happened. I have no clue how the external forces in the universe allowed it to happen, but they did.
So almost no human being will ever experience that level of success. Can you share what your life was like at the very peak of that album?
I mean, I don't think anybody would look at that and go, that is a David Lee Roth equivalent of rock stardom. We weren't driving around in a Rolls Royce full of strippers. Like it wasn't like that. We were a bunch of dudes on a bus. And I think at the time we were like, we're on a bus. This is awesome. If I go on a bus at 43, I'm like, it smells like farts in here. Like your perspective changes. The thing that was exciting wasn't so much like we're making a ton of money or any of that. And there were times, especially after In Too Deep came out, where we were just getting checks. It was like, this is great. But the thing that was exciting is just dashing around the world. We need to be in Singapore in 24 hours. How are we going to get there? The day after, we need to be in Amsterdam. I got to see the world many times over. And it was paid for by the band was funding it. The label was funding it. I was getting paid to do it. We were headlining shows. So people are coming to see you and they're excited to meet you. That was the best part. Like the exposure to the world, it was cool. And being able, like to be in Tokyo and kind of know how to get around when you're a kid from Ajax. And for the longest time, our universe was that big. And then it expanded across the globe. That is a unique experience that few people get to have, and I feel really lucky to been able to do that. That was the best part for me. Like that lifestyle is fun.
Do you remember receiving the news that the album had gone gold, then platinum, then multi-platinum?
No, I we must have gone to the label in New York, and they would have presented us with the gold. I have the gold records. The gold record I think is at my nephew's house in Canada. The platinum record is somewhere in this room, and the like the three platinum record is at my other nephew's house. And Yeah, I don't remember receiving those. I definitely don't remember receiving the three platinum one. That would have came later. There would have been a little, delivery at the label in New York, and and then you go, "This is awesome." I remember we were really picky though because the gold record is what you think in your head, a gold record, but people don't play records anymore. And so I remember they gave us a gold CD, and we were like, I don't want that. I want the record. So the label, to their credit, gave us a gold record. Here's the thing about gold records, and I think we discovered this at Metalworks. If you take one of them off out of the frame and you flip it over, it's just a spray painted record. I think we did that, and it was like UB40 or something on the other side. Like not even the band's record. They just have a stock of. Like they go to Salvation Army or something and get,
Yeah, this can be a
cheap.
coaster or it can be a gold plaque for somebody.
Yeah, yeah. Like you get a Herb Alpert record, and one side of it needs to become gold now. So that's a record that's gone, I don't know, probably 10 billion. I don't even know how many albums Herb Alpert has sold. I was telling my son when he was getting into vinyl, I said, you can go to any record store in the world, like not a record store, like a Goodwill, Salvation Army, St. Vincent de Paul, whatever, there will be a Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass Band record for sale. Doesn't matter where you are. That guy sold a lot of records.
If you're into books, the equivalent is if you go to any Salvation Army or used store, there's 1,000 copies of the Da Vinci Code. That's like the
Yeah.
equivalent. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not into those kinds of books, so I haven't read that one. But yeah, that one, and what's that other one? The Shades of Grey book, I'm sure is in there. Like these
Yeah.
fad books that come around. But
Twilight and Harry
anyway, yeah,
Potter. Yeah.
yeah, Twilight, the pulp stuff. Anyway, so I don't really remember exactly getting the records. The thing I remember about that record in particular is working with the producer Jerry Finn, who produced Blink, Enema of the States, and Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, and a couple more. He was the engineer on Dookie. He produced Rancid Out Come the Wolves, which was another of our favorite records. And we picked him. Like he said he would do it. We picked him, and he was just a great guy. We really loved him, and he was really fun to work. Like hilarious. I like funny people. He's funny. He was funny. He passed away, unfortunately, very young. But we loved Jerry, and that experience working with him was awesome. So that's my favorite memory of recording that record, which we did at Metalworks, was working with him.
What do you think made him so great at what he did? I mean, he made some of the most iconic albums of all time.
He was a great engineer, so because of the Green Day stuff and everything he did before, so he could make it sound good. But his approach to producing was like, when you might want to fix something at home or something like that. We know this guy who's he's like an older guy that that we've become friends with, and we would say, "Oh, this broke at the house. We need to hire an electrician or something to come." And he knows a lot about houses. He'd be like, "Oh, why don't you go dig a trench over there and tell me what you see?" And then we dig the trench, and you see, "Oh, the conduit's corroded." He's like, "Oh, why don't you go to Home Depot and buy just this section of conduit?" You go, "Okay," so you go and you buy it. And then you bring it back. He's like, "Well, why don't you just take that wire and slide it through the conduit?" Okay, you do that. And he goes, "Why don't you just plug it back in again?" And all of a sudden it works. And you fixed it yourself, right? You didn't have to call the electrician. And Jerry was kind of like that. Like he wouldn't say, "Do this, do that." He would make little suggestions that would, you could get to where he wanted you to go on your own. And that's something I remember, and that's what I liked about him. As far as his approach to producing, it was a light touch, but he was always right. Like he'd be like, "This needs this. Like maybe do that. Like try something like this. Like what do you think?" And then you'd get there, and you'd be like, "That's awesome." So I remember that. That's sort of how I would. That's what I remember, at least with me. In songwriting, when we were doing pre-pro, we would get together and work on songs, and then he would come and sit on a chair and with a notepad and just watch, and he would just make notes. And then that's what I mean. Like he would help you get to where he knew you wanted to be, but you maybe didn't know how to get there. And then, other than that, just he's fun to hang out with. I mean, so much of, you know, it's like getting a realtor. You sit in the car with this person all the time because you're going around looking at houses. You want somebody who's not annoying. You're sitting in the studio with a guy for months. You want somebody who's not annoying. He's entertaining. He was so funny. And a lot of the like jokes and stuff that came about, even the pain for pleasure thing in some ways was like a riff off of a Mr. Show sketch. Mr. Show with Bob David and Bob Odenkirk and David Cross. Like that kind of came from a Mr. Show sketch, and Jerry introduced us to that. So there was like a big brother aspect to him, like a cooler older brother saying like, check this out. This is the cool thing. So that was cool. I loved him.
So I'm going to share a few accolades from the singles, and then I have a question about the singles. So Fat Lip went double platinum, went to #1 on the Billboard Alternative Airplay charts in the US. The music video topped MTV's Total Request Live and Much Music's Countdown. Then with In Too Deep, 2 times platinum, also went to #1 on Much Music. You guys made some really memorable music videos for the 3 singles, including Motivation as well. Is there anything you can share about those 3 music videos? Any story that comes to mind that you think our audience would get a kick out of?
Well, looking back, I would say for me, one of the things I'm most proud of, at least just for my involvement in the band, were those early videos. We, again, luckily just made the right connection with the right person who had the right sense of humor at the perfect time. The Makes No Difference video was cool. It was our first experience, but we needed something else for like they didn't have a big budget. The label's like, okay, this is the main album. This is your shot. You have to like, let's get a single going. Like write a hit song and we will push it. Here's the money. What do you want to do? And they asked us who we wanted to direct the video, and we had no idea. Like the only director at the time I think I knew was Spike Jonze, just because of the Beastie Boys. And like he wasn't going to do it. And so they asked us, were there any music videos that we liked? And we said, well, we like that Nelly Country Grammar video, which is
such a random
in
reference.
St. Louis. Completely weird, but we liked the energy of it. We liked the colors in it. We liked just the vibe of it. And they said, well, why do you meet that guy? And so his name was Mark Klasfeld. And we go to Vegas. We were in Vegas playing a show, and he was there. Like, we met him. And we didn't know what to expect, but he's a very clean cut, sort of like he looks like Jean-Claude Van Damme, and like super clean cut, preppy looking guy. It was not what we were expecting. And he kind of pitched like a punk version of that sort of documentary style type of video, just with crazy stuff happening while we perform. And we said, okay, that's fun. And he said, where do you want to shoot the video? Like, do you want to shoot it in Canada? And I think we said, no, we have to shoot it in Pomona, California. And it was like, why? At the time, that was the only place that we had a solid fan base where we could say Sum 41 is going to shoot a video and kids would go. Because while we were touring and we were in the van and we were opening for bands like Face to Face or whatever, we played one show at this club called the Glass House, and it just like grassroots naturally kicked off. And our agent was like, you guys can go and play at the Glass House by yourself. Like you can headline that venue. It's like 800 people or something. We were like, we can? Like, if we shot it in Toronto, half the like it would be like makes no difference. Half the people there are our friends from high school, you know. And so we shot it in Pomona, and it just had the right look. Even though we're not a California band, it looked like a California punk band. Everybody looked cool. It looked fun. And then all the things that happened were just sort of random ideas that Klassfeld came up with, or things that happened spontaneously in the moment. And then the pain for pleasure thing at the end, we said, can we shoot a video for our heavy metal bands? Like, and he's like, we can do 1 or 2 takes. Like, because there was a 2-day shoot. This was at the end of the second day. Everybody's exhausted. So we shot, I don't know, one take, maybe 2. And then that was the one that ended up as a tag on the back of the video. And then at the beginning of the video, it starts with that a cappella hip hop thing that was just a random idea. He was like, there's a guy in the convenience store right there. You guys should go rap in front of him. We're like, okay. So we go and do that. And then that became the beginning of the video. So when it went to MTV, it started blowing up. The song was blowing up on the radio, and MTV was playing the whole thing, the intro, the video, and the pain for pleasure thing. And this is when TRL was Carson Daly, you know, what do you call it, Times Square. And it was blowing, it was like us and Christina Aguilera, or us and the Backstreet Boys, you know, going head to head for #1 on TRL, which is a huge deal. But, and you know this, like there was no MTV in Canada when we were growing up. The first time we ever saw MTV is when we were on MTV. And so like, even though it was like, people were like, this is like massive. We were like, oh, cool. Like, yeah, great. You know,
It was all much
good
music
job.
for us, right? In Canada.
Yeah, much music is, you know, is what we knew and grew up with. So it didn't have that same, like we obviously knew about it, like Ferris Bueller's Day Off is that whole montage at the beginning where like we were exposed to the idea, but it was this forbidden media, not allowed in Canada. So that was funny. That was funny that we were on there. So then Into Deep, we stuck with Klassfeld, and it was our A&R guy, Louis Largent, who came up with the idea. He said, what if you do a parody of Back to School, which is a Rodney Dangerfield movie from the 80s? And then he looked at me and he goes, you're doing the Triple Lindy. And I was like, okay. And even though In Too Deep isn't my favorite song, like now I recognize it's a very well constructed song. It's a hit pop song. But I didn't listen to pop songs like that so much, but I love the video. I love the video. It might be our best video. But again, that relationship with Klassfeld and his ability to get the jokes, and he's funny, and you know, the references in there, Slash coming out of the water and the Estranged video, and we have Dave do that out of the pool. I mean, it's got some great moments. And it just looks like fun. It really captures the early 2000s sort of pop punk scene. Like it's bright and sunny and light and funny. Whereas the origin of punk is dark and gritty and angry. It's just such a contrast. But yeah, the video was hilarious, and it is still a classic and holds up. And I would argue that song, there are certain songs that I think might not have had the same lasting power if the video wasn't as good. Because if a kid discovering Sum 41 now, who's 13 or something, goes on YouTube and watches that video, it's not like they're watching an older video from the 80s or something where you go, oh, this doesn't look like, it still looks current. It still looks like it could have been made now, which I think will help give the song a lasting life, and it still captures the whole feeling and you know, vibe of the whole thing. And so the next video was
Motivation.
what's it called? Motivation. That video we switched to a different director. That was Joseph Kahn, who directed all the Limp Bizkit videos and stuff. And that was not my favorite video. I got to do a video on my YouTube about that one. I mean, it was just a performance video. It's cool. It's energetic, but like I said, it didn't have that hook. Like it didn't have that something that made it a classic, in my opinion. Um, Whereas there's five videos, in my opinion, that are just classics. And you can look back and they'll go toe to toe with any other video, and people can watch it. And even if they don't like the band, they're like, okay, that was pretty good.
So In Too Deep is still the band's most popular song on Spotify, 616 million plays, which is an absurd number. Is it true that you wrote Pain for Pleasure in 10 minutes while sitting on the toilet? Is this real? Is this a real thing?
Yeah, well, yeah, that was my songwriting contribution. They'd already written, okay, on the Half Hour Power, there are two instrumental maiden type galloping maiden songs. And then we were recording another instrumental song for All Killer that, I think I didn't write the music, but we were recording it. And Dave had named it Pain for Pleasure. And as we were listening to it in the control room, sort of the mix, the rough mix, I thought, this is funny if I wrote lyrics. And so I went to the bathroom and just wrote down the first thing that came to mind using Dave's line of Pain for Pleasure. And I came back into the room and just started singing it. I didn't say I've written lyric. I just started singing it because I thought it would be funny. And I wasn't trying to record it. I just was like, this will be hilarious. And then they said, we have to record those lyrics. And I went into the vocal booth, recorded the lyrics. Dave does that really high scream at the end. That's him, because he can do that. And that's how that one came about. So again, it was a spontaneous joke that we ran with because we were like, that's hilarious. Let's put it on there. And then that's the ending of the album. The beginning of the album has an Iron Maiden intro that's like Number of the Beast, which I think is written by, it's not Vincent Price, because that's he does Thriller. It's something like that. But anyway, we said let's start the album with something like that. So I wrote a little sort of rhyming poem, I guess, and that is read by Louis Largent, who came up with the In Too Deep concept. Came up with a ton of concepts. Lewis was hilarious. Let me just jump back real quick. While we're doing those showcases at Ted's Wrecking Yard for the labels, we narrowed it down to two labels. Can't remember the name of the one label. It was Island Def Jam and not Atlantic, but something like that. Doesn't matter. And we said into the Derek said into the audience, because we had trampolines on the stage and the guys would jump on those. And Derek said, whoever comes up on stage and bounces on the trampoline in this next song, that's the label we're going to sign with. And Lewis walked up, gave everybody the finger, and started bouncing on the trampoline. And the president of the other label was there. And we found out after, he turned to somebody and said, if that guy worked for me, I'd fire him. And so we signed with Lewis, and the other agent was Rob Stevenson. He was great, went on to have an amazing career. Fall Out Boy, The Killers, like tons of huge bands. But Lewis, jumped on the trampoline. And I was like, we were like, let's sign with them. And again, can you imagine if we signed with the other label where the mentality of the president was, if you do something like that, I'll fire you, when so much of the stuff we did was ridiculous? The president of the label of Island Def Jam was Leor Cohen, who was Beastie Boys' manager. So he got it.
So in support of the album, you guys toured in the US and Canada with Goldfinger, and I reached out to another iconic drummer, and I have some kind words sent in from Goldfinger drummer Darrin Pfeiffer. And this is what he has to say. He says, me and Steve have been around the world together as Goldfinger and Sum 41 shared many an international stage. So many incredible memories and stories, and lots of mutual love and admiration. He's one of a kind, and I'm happy to call him a friend. That's from Darrin Pfeiffer.
Oh, that's very sweet. He's a lovely guy, man. He's hilarious. He's this big, giant dude. I got two opinions on this, because in one way I completely don't approve, because Conan O'Brien was my favorite host of a late night talk show. But Goldfinger went on the Conan show, and Darrin picked Conan up and held him over his head and then dropped Conan. And I was just like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. Needless to say, they never went back. But that's my memory. That's the kind of guy Darrin is. So there you go. I can't believe he did that.
One final thing about All Killer No Filler, and we'll move on to the next album. I got a little bit of acclaim. So Top40.com ranked the album as the 9th greatest pop punk album of all time. The album was included in Rock Sound's 101 Modern Classics list at number 46, and the album was included at number 11 on Rock Sound's 51 Most Essential Pop Punk Albums of All Time.